Hi everybody. Today we're going to be looking at a few more processes within our year to end process. We're looking at advanced payroll at the moment. Part of the end of year processes that involve the payroll function is the end of financial year. It's quite an important process that we need to go through in order to continue paying our staff. So if, for example, like we are at the moment, which is the 3rd of July, we've started a new financial year. What will happen is if you are trying to process any payroll details as of today's date, which is in the new financial year, it won't actually enable you to enter in any current pay slips because we're in a new financial year. So if you have a look over here, setup, and go to company information, our current financial year is set to 2020. Now, because we are now in the financial year of 2021, the system will recognize that we're in a new financial year and it won't enable you to process these pay slips. So what needs to happen is the following process. Now, you need to, first of all, most importantly, and I stress most importantly, this file needs to be backed up before anything happens. Okay, so it's very simple to back up. As you just seen, I went to File, Backup. I'm going to browse and place this backup file in my desktop, and I'm going to call it End of Financial Year. Now, the reason I'm doing this is if, for example, we generate pay slips, group certificates or payment summary slips for our employees, and for some unknown reason they don't receive their payment summary, which is previously known as a group certificate. Once you start a new financial year, you can't bring up the previous year's payment summary slips and send it across to your employee. So if there is an issue as I've just described, what you're going to be required to do is utilize the backup of your file, and we've just backed it up as you can see here. And what you'll have to do is rename this file 2020 or another name, and you need to go back into MYOB and open up your old file in order to generate your payment summary for that particular employee because they're claiming they didn't receive it. So that's important. That's obviously one quick example that came to mind, but anything else, I mean, you just assume here that you've made a mistake or the accountant has asked you to make the following changes. Once you start a new payroll year or a new financial year, the system won't enable you to amend or make any changes to the financial year or the payroll year that you've closed. So you need to obviously revert back to your saved file and update that one and make that one your current file. Okay, so saving is very, very important for that purpose. Now, once you've done that, then it's just a matter of then going to File, Close Financial Year. Yes, I'm the only user. Next. This is just standard. All right, so you can see the next financial year will be from the 1st of July, which was 2 days back, until next year, end of July. All right, so that's all good. We close that and we hit Next and we go through the process. So that's how to start a new financial year. I'm not going to do that for now, but what I want to do is start a new payroll year. Now, the reason why you don't need to start a financial year is that a lot of the times the financial year has to remain open until the accountant comes back to you with changes that you may need to make to your current financial year. These are usually accountant journals. We'll cover that in a moment as well. But for the sake of payroll, if you have a version where you need to create a new payroll year, then you need to come to here, and then you have the option of selecting a new payroll year, and you go through the process. Now, this system here is not enabling me to start a new payroll year, so I don't have to worry about it on this system or this version of MYOB. So that's that step or that process that I wanted to cover with you. The next one, in terms of our end of financial year processes, will be a stock take. Now we've already covered that in brief, where we were adjusting our inventory. Another step that needs to occur at the end of the financial year is also adjusting our stock. So essentially, we covered it earlier in one of the previous exercises. Let's assume here that you've done a physical stock take and we've noticed that certain items need to be adjusted. You have to therefore go into inventory, adjust your inventory, and make the necessary changes over here in terms of the items that you have and whether they've increased or decreased, whatever the case is. Refer back to the previous exercise and you'll have that those steps and processes there for you. So that's that. The other items that need to be taken care of end of financial year is your reconciliations. Now, we've already covered an exercise on reconciling our bank account, but what you'll also need to do is reconcile your petty cash account if you're using petty cash. But more importantly, you also need to reconcile your pay-as-you-go liability accounts for your staff. So just finding that for you here. So pay-as-you-go withholding payable. I'm going to put in today's date. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that these following amounts and the amount paid, we haven't actually paid the taxation office yet. These following amounts match up with the payment that we've made to Australian Taxation Office. And I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. We currently owe in this financial or this week, we owe $330.08 to the ATO. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick journal just so that you can see what happens here. Okay, so I'm going to go to spend money. 330, I believe it was, and 8 cents. ATO. Okay, so I'm paying the ATO what is owed in terms of pay as you go, and I'm looking for the linked account, which is here. It's NT. There's no GST involved. Okay, so that's done. Now, if I go to reconcile now, and I put in today's date, now you can see the payment that I've just made. Now, that payment is for these transactions, or sorry, these taxes that I've withheld from my employees for this period. Okay, so now the closing balance, okay, matches our calculated balance. Now this closing balance was the initial figure that we started off with. Okay, so if I untick this, the transactions that have been ticked equate to $330.08, which is exactly what I pay Taxation Office. So you need to reconcile your pay-as-you-go as well at the end of the financial year, just to make sure that you've paid all the staff, so you've paid the taxes for the staff's tax that you've been withholding correctly. Right? This confirms that. The other thing that needs to be done is your superannuation. That has to be reconciled also. So the same thing would apply to super. Once you've paid your superannuation to the clearinghouse. Now, I'll give you an example once again so you can see how this works. So we use an AMP clearinghouse. So what happens, right, is we reconcile how much super we need to pay each quarter, and we send this across to the ATO's, the AMP's clearinghouse. Now, how much was it again? I forgot the amount. Let me have a look. $368.81. $368.81. $361.81. Okay. So what will happen is we'll make 368. It was. 368 and 81 cents. Okay, so we've paid this to the AMP clearinghouse, and what we've done also is we've actually logged into the clearinghouse's portal, right? So this is independent of MYOB. We've logged into the AMP's portal, and we've notified them of the employees that we have, how much super has been withheld, and which superannuation companies or super choice they're with, so that when AMP receives our check or our payment, right, they will then, upon our for authorization, they will pick up the fact that Mary's with, for example, Australian Super, and Alan's with some other super company, right? And we'll also notify the portal, the AMP portal, that Mary's superannuation for the quarter is whatever the amount is, okay? Then they'll then take this full amount and distribute it to different superannuation funds that are associated with our employees. And once that's done, what I want to do is I want to go over to here, and I want to make sure that the amount that I've paid in the amount that I've paid AMP matches what is owed as a liability. Okay, so as you can see here, I've done that, and nothing remains. Everything is all clear, and I can now reconcile that. So that's superannuation. Okay, that's another process that needs to take place, and what we need to reconcile also. The next thing that needs to be done, once we've gone through and we've processed and we've reconciled our accounts and we're happy with all the figures, now we can go ahead and submit our payment summary slips to our employees, which was previously called your group certificate. Now, if you're using STP at the moment, the good thing is that this report would automatically be lodged with through your employees' MyGov account. So basically, with STP, because you're lodging and you're submitting your payroll data weekly or fortnightly to the ATO through STP, it automatically updates their account, your employee's account, so they don't need to wait to the end of the financial year for them to receive your final report. They have a running balance. That report appears on their account as a running balance. But what needs to happen at the end of the financial year, which for us was last week, you need to notify the ATO in your batch in the STP that you submit that it's the final payslip for the financial year. So there's a question there, and unfortunately I can't do it here, that it's a final payslip, and hence it will automatically notify the ATO to finalise your payment summary report ready for your tax return. Okay, but the previous or our internal system enables us to still create a payment summary slip. Now, all this information has to be entered in correctly first of all. If there's any blanks, it obviously won't enable it to go through. So I'm just quickly jotting some information here. Let's recognize the fact that I've got to put O2, do I? We need a valid ABN number as well. Okay. We need to find a valid ABN number. One moment. Let me see if I can find something. Okay, I'll just pop the video on hold and I'll find a valid ABN. Hi guys, I've just entered in a valid ABN number in and I've hit next. Okay, this is important. We need to ensure that the wage categories that we've used in our financial year's payroll run needs to be all ticked. Okay, The easiest way to do this essentially is to tick all. Okay, you can't go wrong that way. But if we don't tick any of these, let's just say, for example, one of our employees worked overtime, 1.5, right? We paid them using this category 1.5. If we don't select this category here, that amount of money that we paid them through overtime won't appear in their payment summary report. It's not going to include that in the calculation of their total gross income for the year. So it's very, very important that this all gets ticked, especially if you've used them. Now, obviously, if you haven't used any of these, I know, for example, there was no, whatever that is, payments made, there's no point in ticking it, right? But that's quite important. Okay, so once they've done that, we hit next. We've only got 2 employees, Mary and Alan. So that's all good. There's nothing to report in terms of fringe benefits tax. Okay, so here we hit save to PDF. Okay, and I'm going to save this to our desktop to show you what it looks like. And this report is quite important because this needs to match what we have in our accounts. And I'll show you what I mean in a moment. So you'll see here now on our desktop that we've got our 2 payment summary reports for our employees. And that didn't open up for some reason because it's looking for a PDF converter. And apparently this computer hasn't got one. That's surprising. So we'll put a PDF converter onto this. Oh, here we go, it opened up. So this is what your employee will receive, and we'll email this across to our employees, or you can print it off and give them a hard copy. It's up to you. But essentially it tells them that their gross payment was as follows, and this is the amount of tax that we withheld. It's for the financial year that just passed. All the details are there. They'll obviously now take this to when they do their tax return and do what needs to be done with it. Now, this also will this will also be sent to the ATO automatically through the system as well, so that they can reconcile on their end as well. So that's what that looks like. But what we want to do is do a few final checks and balances before we issue these. Now, the most important is this figure here. Tax withheld and gross payments. So if you can just remember these 2 figures, 2823, and what I normally do is I normally print this off and I then attach this report to my profit and loss report and my payroll summary report, because these figures need to match. Because if you've paid someone in payroll and put them into the wrong account, right, then when you finalize your tax return to the taxation office, you're going to be submitting to the taxation office a different figure to what you've sent to them in your payroll information. Okay, so this is very, very important. What I mean is if I have a look at my profit and loss report, okay, for the period of June to July, okay, here you can see that the wages and salaries expense was 2871. So when I do my tax return at the end of the financial year, when I go to the accountant for the company, this is, we're going to record the fact that we paid out in wages 2871 when we do our final tax return. But we want to make sure that this also reflects what we sent to the taxation office when we did our payroll run as well. So this is going to go to the ATO automatically. Now, so ATO is going to pick this up and say, okay, they've had 2 employees and total gross pay was 2823, right? This has to match what appears in our account, our expense account for wages and salaries. And as you can see, it does. Disregard cents, right? No one's ever concerned about cents. You can't actually put this on your reports anyway, only whole figures, right? So this is very, very important. So hence, I normally print this off and attach that to that payroll report also, just to confirm that when I was paying my staff through payroll, that the wages accounts that I selected when we're setting up the employees hasn't incorrectly been put into another expense account. For example, over here we've got other payroll expenses. Sometimes through mistake, an account, when we're setting up our payroll, I'll give you an example so that you know what I'm talking about. So, for example, if we go to wages, right, overtime, okay, you can see now that this is actually default. It doesn't require any changing. Let me see one that does. So these are all default. You can't actually change the accounts. But here's an example. See how we've got these expense accounts. So you've got other payroll expenses and superannuation. Now, if we had mistakenly put this under wages and salaries over here, wherever it is, okay, if we had made a mistake and done this, then our wages and salaries account in our profit and loss report would be higher, right? Would be more than what we submitted in this report. There'll be discrepancy. And when there's a discrepancy, people ask questions, okay? So we need to ensure that everything was done correctly. So that's the first thing. Second thing, taxes withheld. This is very, very important as well. So the report to the ATO will say that we had withheld $330 in tax. Now we want to make sure that we not only withheld that, but we actually paid that to the ATO as well. All right, so to check that, it doesn't appear on your P&L, your profit and loss report, we need to generate our payroll summary report. And this tells us that the taxes that appear on our report over there matches this current report. Because what you need to be aware of is when we're doing our, when we're paying our taxation, you'll be generating this report to find out what your total wages were and your total taxes were in order to pay your obligation. So you're generating this report. This is what we're working off. You're not working off this report. Okay, so this report only comes into the picture at the end of the financial year. So once we've confirmed that these figures are correct, we can then proceed, save the summary report, then go to your business portal, which is linked to the ATO, and then submit this information to the ATO. Okay? This process is quite simple. What's important is that this information is accurate. And when you've got quite a number of staff and quite a number of weeks of payroll going forward, it's quite easy that a small mistake is made and these figures are out. So this is the process of finalising your employees' payment summary report. And even though you're using STP and that's getting lodged directly every week, it's equally important that the steps that I've just covered now, you finalise that at the end of the financial year, and if required, you may need to make adjustments if you've made a mistake or there's been a data entry error along the way. So that's what I want to cover in terms of your payment summary reports to the ATO. There's a few other little points that I'm going to cover as well. Let me just bring up the report. So we'll close this one off and I'll generate and create a new video for the next one or two pointers that I have. Thanks for listening.